Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes. Move to adopt.
Second.
Three reading rule has been suspended. It's been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Sievert, seconded by Mr. Twist. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. C? Yes. Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the next resolution of the evening, Resolution R79, 2022?
Resolution number R79, 2022. Resolution declaring as an emergency the need for the Cornish Road Waterline Repair Project and authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio to enter into emergency contracts for the Cornish Road Waterline Repair Project without competitive bidding as provided by Section 735.051 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency. This is a not to exceed amount of $100,000. This is the first reading.
Move to suspend.
Second.
It has been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Whidden, seconded by Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead? Yes. Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes. Move to adopt. Second.
The three reading rule has been suspended. It has been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Whidden. Mrs. Knight, are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Snead? Yes. Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the next resolution of the evening, Resolution R80, 2022?
Resolution number R80, 2022. A resolution authoring consent, cooperation, and participation with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the resurfacing of East Main Street from Mulberry Street to the Troy, Ohio East Corporation Limit and declaring an emergency. This is the first reading.
Move to suspend. Second.
It has been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Pierce, seconded by Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Snead? Yes. Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes. Move to adopt. Second.
The three reading rule has been suspended. It has been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Schilling. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead? Yes. Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the next resolution of the evening, Resolution R81, 2022?
Resolution number R81, 2022, resolution approving funding to the Troy Development Council for Economic Development for the City of Troy, Ohio. This is at the amount of $140,000 for calendar year 2023. First reading.
Move to suspend. Second.
It has been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Schilling. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead? Yes. Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Move to adopt. Second.
The three reading rule has been suspended. It has been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Sievert. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead? Yes. Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the next resolution of the evening, Resolution R82, 2022?
Resolution number R82, 2022, resolution approving funding to Troy Main Street, Inc. for calendar 2023. The amount will be $60,000. First reading.
Move to suspend.
Second. It has been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Schilling, seconded by Mr. Whidden. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Rozell.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes. Move to adopt. Second.
The three reading rule has been suspended. It has been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Schilling. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Rozell.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the next resolution, Resolution R-83, 2022?
Resolution number R-83, 2022. Resolution authorizing the Board of Recreation of the City of Troy, Ohio to enter into a contract with the Troy Recreation Association, Inc. for recreation services. This provides for funding for calendar year 2023 up to $32,000. This is the first reading.
Suspend. Second.
It has been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Whidden. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Rozell.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes. Second.
The three reading rule has been suspended. It has been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Schilling. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Rozell.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. We will move on to ordinances now. I'll ask Mrs. Knight to read the first ordinance of the evening, Ordinance 060, 2022.
Ordinance number 060, 2022, ordinance amending ordinance number 042, 2022 to make a correction in section 1143.22M6B. This is requiring a change to the zoning code. There will be a public hearing at the next meeting. This has been recommended by the Troy Planning Commission. First reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight, and in consideration of a future public hearing, this will stand as the first reading of the ordinance. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the next ordinance of the evening? Ordinance 061, 2022.
Ordinance number 061, 2022. Ordinance appropriating funds necessary for the various departments and offices of the City of Troy, Ohio for the year 2023. This appropriation ordinance is the adoption of the budget. First reading.
Move to suspend. Second.
It has been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Siebert. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Rozell.
No.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
No.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes. It won't matter.
Fails.
You guys have seven.
I do not believe we have 7 members voting in the affirmative, so this will
Right.
stand as the first reading, and this will be held over for a second reading at our next meeting.
Okay.
Mrs. Knight, will you please read the next ordinance of the evening, Ordinance 062, 2022.
Ordinance number 062, 2022. Ordinance amending ordinance number 065, 2021. It's amended by ordinance numbers 030, 2022, 056, 2022, and 058, 2022. Appropriating funds necessary for the various departments and offices of the City of Troy, Ohio for the year 2022. This should be the last reappropriation for the year 2022, we hope. First reading.
Move to suspend.
Second.
It has been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mrs. Snee. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Rozell.
Yes.
Move to adopt.
The three reading rule has been suspended. It has been moved to adopt the ordinance by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Pierce. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Mrs. Snee.
Yes.
Mr. Rozell.
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. We've come to the end of our legislative calendar. Are there any communications or announcements this evening, Mrs. Knight?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Move on to comments of officials. Mayor Oda.
Just to congratulate the fire department on their open house Sunday afternoon. It was well attended and just really good to have that open and be able to do it. We've waited a long time.
Thank you, Mayor. Director of Public Service and Safety, Mr. Titterington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things. Announced that City Hall will be closed the holidays, the 23rd and the 26th of December, as well as January 2nd. This is one of those years that those holidays do not fall during the week, so refuse and recycling will be on schedule. There won't be any delays at all. The other is we have received a couple of questions about some work that is being done near Forest Elementary today and tomorrow. Specifically, they are reconstructing the intersection ramps at Union, Franklin, Franklin and Canal. Union and Canal. Those were reconstructed at the request of the schools. They will be ADA compliant. They poured them today. Weather permitting, they will remove the forms and backfill the area. So in the meantime, we do have it coned off. We know there are a lot of walkers and elementary school kids. So just wanted to get that out there, and that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Moving on, Director of Law, Mr. Kerber.
Mr. President, I don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerber. City Auditor, Mr. Fergie.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Fergie. Do any council members have any comments they wish to make?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell.
I just want to clarify my no vote on the budget. I have nothing against the budget. I just think the budget is the most important document that we pass all year long. It affects everything that we do or plan to do in the city, and I think we just need to give it a little more consideration than our typical legislation. Second comment I have, in the past few years, most everybody up here knows, or I'm sure have seen Wes and Rosemary Jones attend many council meetings to be informed and to participate in the city functions and news. I would just ask that you keep Rosemary and her family in your prayers and thoughts this weekend, since Wes passed away last Friday. That's it.
Very sad.
Oh, and I also appreciate the administration getting the budget to us, that we have time for a second reading. Sorry, I left that out.
Mr. Rozell. Any other, Mr. Whidden?
To back up what the mayor said, it was a really nice event this weekend at the new fire station. It was my first time going through there. It's a wonderful facility, one that the entire city can be proud of. It's great to see. I was really proud of the entire fire department, everyone here on council, the mayor, the city director, who had a hand in that from the beginning. It's great to see that come to fruition now. It's a really great facility.
Thank you, Mr. Whidden. Mr. Schilling.
I just wanted to concur with Mr. Rozell. I think the budget is probably one of the most important things that we do. I think it's important that the residents, the voters, have an opportunity to review the budget proposals, the appropriations, and this gives them an opportunity to go to the website, the Troy City website, and you can download the budget and look at item by item what it's going to do, what the plans are for next year. And again, we look forward to any comments or questions concerning that as council people. Again, just like to see the community participate in this budget process as much as they feel warranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling.
Mr. President.
Mrs. Snead.
If I could just add on to Mr. Titterington's comment, since I work at Forest Elementary, I just want to thank the city. There was Officer Long, our school resource officer for elementary schools. Their officer was there today, along with someone from the construction crew, making sure that all the street crossings were done safely. So that was nice to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Snead. Any other council members? Do any staff members in the audience have any comments that they'd like to make? We now open up to citizen comments. If you wish to address council on any topic, you're invited to do so. Please come to the podium, give your name and address, and take as much time as you wish to consume. Seeing none, this meeting stands adjourned. Our next meeting will be on December 19th at 7 o'clock, right here in town.